Wow. So the audio actually worked. So now we have music to our intro. That's pretty sick. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Fitness Decoded. I'm your co-host, Matt Jones. This is my secondary co-host, David Castro. No, we got a real fun episode for you guys today. We're going to be talking about the sort of mind-body connection, otherwise known as psychology. In this instance, where it's going to be more sports psychology when we talk about sort of terminology that we're going to go into. But this isn't just going to be good if you're an athlete, if you're uh, a gym goer. This is going to be good for anybody who just needs to deal with stress management, motivation, confidence in just general everyday life. Even more so though if you are in a profession that requires a little bit more of those personality traits. But the main focus today is going to be how it relates to sports, how it relates to athletics, and the kind of general idea behind sports psychology. So let's get into it a little bit here. So the goal of sports psychology is to understand how emotional and physiological factors affect performance. Now, through analyzing our psyche, we can figure out how the ideal mental conditions to achieve peak performance. These techniques don't necessarily need to apply to just athletes, like I said. So anyone who needs to perform mental skills in a performance setting can benefit from any kind of mental training. So we're talking about like doctors, surgeons, actors, business executives. You got a big meeting. You got to talk to your shareholders, police and military, musicians as well. You got a big show. All of those kind of professions are going to be able to benefit from performance enhancing psychology. That's what we want to call it here. So we're going to go over, like I said, this is going to be probably a big one today. We've got a lot of things to talk about. We're just going to kind of hit everything in order here. The first on the chopping block we've got today I want to talk about is motivation. So motivation is essentially the intensity and direction of one's effort. And we relate it to sports and athletics. To become the best athlete you can be, you need to be motivated to do what it takes to maximize your ability and achieve your goals. So motivation in sports is so important because you have to be willing to work hard in the face of fatigue and boredom, pain, and just the desire to do other things, right? No distractions. So when we talk about motivation, there's going to be two main types of motivation. The first is going to be called intrinsic motivation. Now, what that means is when you're intrinsically motivated, you engage in an activity solely because you enjoy it and you get a personal satisfaction from it. So basically just doing something because it makes you feel good inside. So for example, you're participating in a sport because it's fun and you enjoy it. You're not doing it to win an award. You're not doing it because you want to go out and beat your opponents and make them feel bad. It makes you feel good. You're doing it because you really like it. And same with exercising. Like an intrinsically motivated reason to exercise would be because you enjoy physically challenging your body. You just like going to the gym. You like the feeling of doing a workout, and all the hormones, that serotonin that's released. You just feel good afterwards, as opposed to going to the gym solely because you need to lose weight to fit into that wedding dress in 8 months. That would be the second type of motivation I'm going to talk about here, which is going to be extrinsic motivation. So when you're extrinsically motivated, you do something in order to gain an external reward. So, like I said before, extrinsically motivated for sports would be you're doing it to win an award, you're doing it to beat your opponents. There's nothing wrong with being extrinsically motivated. Everyone's
I
gonna
think
have,
another one to quickly mention is they're also just younger athletes who are just like they're only doing it because their parents put them in that sport.
right. So another good example, and I think something that we can literally all relate to in terms of extrinsic motivation, is your job. There are people who go to their job because they love what they do. Okay, whether they're paid or whether they're not paid, they'll go to their job because they love their job. They're intrinsically motivated to go to their job. I want to say probably most of us go to our job because we have bills to pay. Okay, we're doing it for the money. Let's be honest here. That would be extrinsically motivated. I'm going to work because I want the money. I want to pay my bills. I want to buy stuff.
It's not even a want at that point. It's just like I need certain things, so
Exactly.
I gotta go to work. Whether I want to or not.
Yeah. Like I would say, at least for me, when it comes to training, I'm more intrinsically motivated because obviously it's something that I like to do. Made a whole podcast about it. It's not something that I just do for the money. I'm not even getting paid now, so clearly I'm intrinsically motivated to even do this show right now, because it's something that I enjoy, it's something that I like, and it makes me feel good inside. Although the money would be nice.
Mammoth Mug, please.
Shout out Mammoth Mug. So there's a few theories that kind of help us understand what makes us motivated. The first one here is going to be called the need achievement theory. So within sports psychology, the need achievement theory is used to help predict task preferences and relative outcomes in performance. Now what that means is it's going to concern certain interactional component factors about our personality. So we talk about personality factors in the need achievement theory. So there's two underlying motives here: achieving success and avoiding failure. So many sports psychologists have actually observed that high achievers with a high motivation to achieve success, or high achievers have a high motivation to achieve success, whereas low achievers have a tendency to concentrate on avoiding failures. High achiever is no stranger to taking risks, so they're going to go out of their way to challenge themselves, seek out those opportunities, whereas the low achiever has more of a threat-based thinking. Now they're going to try and seek out the easy tasks. They don't like to be challenged. They want to do what's easy, and they don't want to fail. So that's the need achievement theory. It's either the achieving success or avoiding failure, right? The second theory we have when we talk about motivation is the achievement goal theory. So there's three interacting factors that determine motivation, with the main focus of goal theory here. That's achievement goals, perceived ability, and achievement behavior. And to understand a person's achievement behavior, we have to take their achievement goals and perceived abilities into account. So someone with a task or mastery orientation, so somebody who's doing something, again, they're the high achiever, they're going out of their way to be challenged, they really want to master whatever task they're doing, they're going to focus on individual improvement, which is going to be that intrinsic motivation. They're doing it for the betterment of themselves, right? They're going to continue to work hard after their failures, and they're going to enjoy the challenge. Now, somebody with an ego or outcome orientation is going to focus more on winning and beating others, which is going to be that psychological extrinsic motivation. They're doing it for the sense of superiority, I guess. They're going to give up easily when there's no chance to win, and they're, like I said before, they're going to gravitate towards easy tasks. So those are the two. There's still one more here that I want to talk about, that I think is probably the most relatable and the most applicable is going to be the self-determination theory of motivation.
Actually, even as before we jump into that, I guess going back to the last one we were talking about, I guess to be successful, you kind of need like a little bit of both,
Yeah.
You require a certain amount of intrinsic motivation, but you also require, a certain amount of extrinsic motivation. I would say is like maybe like an extra little push,
Yeah.
Especially, if I don't think everybody is absolutely like if somebody's like, oh, I only do this for myself, there's probably a certain amount of you where you think to yourself and you're like, you know what, I also if it's like a job, it's like I don't, if you enjoy your job, it's like I don't just go to my job because I enjoy it. I also have people who kind of depend on me as well.
Exactly.
Which is kind of like that extrinsic motivation.
Yeah. So there's really no it's not black and white. It can obviously be a mix of both. I think for a lot of the things that we do in our everyday life, is a mix of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. When I was doing some research, I know there was a study that I saw where they were saying that if you do something too much stuff extrinsically, it kind of devalues the intrinsic worth of the task you're performing, if that makes any sense. So like if you're constantly just doing something for the reward, that's the only reason you're doing it, you do it too much and you're rewarded too often, you're never going to feel good about doing it, essentially.
You also have to consider like what happens when you don't get the reward.
Exactly.
Are you just gonna drop it? Like the minute things don't go right.
which which is going to be that low achiever, that failure, and now they've given up, because they were too focused on the extrinsic value of what they were doing, that reward, and they can't see how it could have potentially just made them better. Like maybe you lost the game, but you scored a few goals. You had a personal best in goal scoring, even though you lost the game. So somebody who's a high achiever would see that and go, great, we lost the game, but I hit a personal best. We can use this, we can grow for it. And somebody who's going to be that low achiever is just going to focus on that failure and go, we lost the game, it's over, guys.
You could also even say like an individual who achieves highly, let's we look at like athletes who like are just have natural amounts of talent, and they're always just used to winning. If that individual doesn't have the resilience or the intrinsic motivation to react in the right way when they actually lose for the first time, they might revert to that low achievement status or frame of thinking where it's just like, oh well, I'm not the best naturally anymore, what do I do?
Yeah. So it kind of brings me to, again, this last theory, this self-determination theory. So this theory basically suggests that people are motivated to grow and change by three innate and universal psychological needs. So sort of what we call Noah's Ark, because the acronym is going to be ARC. So the first here is going to be autonomy. Now, I'm sure, again, this is just very basic psychology. I think everyone can probably relate to all of these, but autonomy is basically people need to feel in control of their own behaviors and goals. So the sense that you're taking direct action and that direct action is resulting in an actual change is going to play a major part in helping people feel more self-determined. The second one is going to be relatedness. So people need to experience a sense of belonging and attachment to other people, not only other people, but the task that they're trying to perform, the people around them. This is especially useful in, obviously, a team setting. If you're connected to your teammates, you're going to feel more motivated to perform and perform at your best. And then the third really important one is competency. So people need to gain a mastery of a task and learn different skills. When people feel that they have learned those skills needed for success, they're more likely to take actions that are going to help them achieve their goals. This is the basic, theory of practicing, right? The more you do something, the more competent you feel to be able to do it again, essentially. So those are kind of the three main sports psychology theories when we talk about motivation. And I know, at least when it comes to my athletics, motivation has always kind of been an issue to kind of go out and do the stuff that needs to get done to be able to improve myself. I don't know how you are with motivation, David, being able to go out and...
I'll say when I played soccer, I was very extrinsically motivated, and there was like a couple of factors that just came into play that where I didn't perform as well as I did. I could, even though I'd put in the work, outside of it. Now that I've switched to like bodybuilding over the last, I guess, four-ish years, I would say the majority of what I do is very like intrinsically motivated, simply because it's just who I am at this point.
Yeah.
Like nobody. I don't really care if people know that I consistently track my food all the time. That wouldn't really matter to me. At this point, like I got like a couple injuries now that I can't really train the way that I like to, but I still do my rehab work. I still do my maintenance work. Even though it gets no likes for Instagram, nobody really cares. It's not that fun. It's pretty boring. It's so ingrained into who I am at this point, where it's just like, I do it, and I'm confident I'll get back to a point where trading becomes enjoyable again, you know?
Right. Yeah. So when I was, I guess, competing for a little bit, I had a sports psychologist. So a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about here is stuff that um, she had gone through with me and stuff that I had to practice to be able to get my mind in the right place to compete at a high level. Which brings me to the 3Ds. So this is going to be really applicable to people who need to figure out what they want to do in their sport. I guess not even only sport. This can also just apply to anything you're trying to achieve a mastery of. So that can be a sport, that can be a profession. You want to be, the best brain surgeon. You need to apply yourself, right? So the 3Ds are going to be able to help you apply yourself and figure out kind of where you want to go, which leads me to the first D, which is direction. So before you can kind of attain what we're going to call prime motivation, prime motivation is basically just the perfect amount of motivation to achieve your goals. Essentially, you have to consider the different directions that you can go in your sport, but also, again, whatever task you're trying to achieve a mastery of. So you have three choices, right? You can stop participating completely, just stop doing it. You can continue at your current level, just plateau essentially, or you can strive to be the best that you can be. Now, there's not really anything wrong with any of these. Like deciding you don't want to do sport anymore, that's fine. You can have your reasons, but it's always, you need to be able to at least assess in that first D direction, assess where you want to go. A lot of athletes that I've talked to, I'll ask them, like, what are your end goals? What are your long-term goals? Where do you want to see yourself? And a lot of them will be, they'll have Olympic aspirations, they'll have pro aspirations, and then you ask them, are you doing everything you can be to achieve that goal? And most of them are not. They haven't really locked down that direction. They're either in that plateau or even considering dropping out, right? Which leads me to the next D here, is going to be decision. So you have three choices of direction. You have to select one of them. Like I said before, none of these directions are necessarily right or wrong or better or worse. They're just simply your options. So your choice is going to dictate the amount of time and effort you're going to put into your sport, your activity, whatever you're doing, and how good of an athlete you will ultimately become. Which leads into the last one here, dedication. So once you've made your decision to be the best athlete that you can be, you have to dedicate yourself to it. If this decision is to become the best athlete, then the last step, dedication, will determine whether you have prime motivation, and sport has to be your top priorities. Only by being completely dedicated to your direction and decision will you ensure that you achieve that prime motivation. So I've talked a lot about prime motivation. How do we develop that prime motivation? So the first one that I want to talk about here, fairly standard one. I'm sure a lot of you, whether you're in like high school, they'll talk to you about this. I'm sure like guidance counselors will always have this conversation. What are your long-term goals? So to be your best, you have to put in a lot of time and effort into your sport. Sometimes it's going to be tough, and that's when you need to remind yourself what your end goal is and why it is worth it. So you want to try and emulate the feelings of pride and inspiration that would come from achieving that goal, and that's actually a technique called visualization, which we will talk about later. The second one here, one that I find I really, really need to be motivated, is have a training partner. So it's, especially for me, it's really difficult to be motivated all of the time by myself. So a training partner can be a coach, it can be a personal trainer, it can be a parent, a friend, whoever. But the best person to have is just a regular training partner. Somebody who you can work together with to accomplish your goals, both your goals and their goals. Even if you're not like psyched to go exercise or go practice that day, you still have that training partner depending on you. So you're gonna get up to put in the time and effort because your partner is counting on you.
Essentially, it's just an extra level of accountability, you know.
Yeah, and it's like,
I guess it's that extrinsic where it's just like, oh, I don't want to let this person down, you know.
exactly, like one thing that I always find funny when I sort of talk to people about, like when you're a trainer, people just assume that you can just train yourself, and it's like, no, I need a coach.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because I don't know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I have all the information, but I need somebody to stand there and tell me to do it, right? That's just something that I have a hard time with, being self-motivated. So a lot of things, yeah, I could fix myself because I know how to do it. I just don't have the motivation within me to actually go and do it. So if I have somebody who's counting on me to go and do it, then I'm going to be more inclined to do so. Another technique.
When you sorry,
Go
when,
ahead.
I'm
No,
gonna
no,
cut
go
you
ahead.
off. When you
Yeah.
were running, did you usually work with a training partner, or did you end up like did you train sometimes by yourself?
So, yeah, that's my career was kind of a unique position, sort of being in a smaller town, a very small high school, in a pretty small athletic district. I was the only sprinter in my district.
Okay.
Out of all the schools, it was just me. So I couldn't train with anybody because there was nobody who could even be close to what I did.
Yeah.
Having them, and like we didn't really have the coaches. Like at a certain point, yeah, I did have a professional coach, and we did do some team training with some of his other athletes as well, where we would just like we would just do lead and trail sprints around the track, stuff like that. So somebody would lead,
Yeah.
somebody would trail, and that was fun. Unless you're the guy who's trailing, which was often me, and the guy you're trailing is much faster than you.
Yeah.
But again, it's that motivation to be able to keep up with that person at least. You can see and go,
Yeah.
I want to be like that guy. I want to be as fast as that guy. But yeah, for most of my athletic career, I had no training partners. I performed in a individual sport, so I didn't really have any teammates. The track and field club was not really a track and field club. The track and field team, you just showed up and you were on the team. Kids basically just used it to get out of school for a few days. No, it was.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean when it's like when it's like a smaller, you know, when it's a smaller school or it's not, you know, the main focus. It's just
I
like
did not play the right sport for my community. Being the only person, and then it's like I show up to a track meet and I absolutely dust everybody, and there's no competition, and I'm like, does it get better?
yeah.
And honestly, for me, it didn't really, but that's actually kind of ironic. That leads me to my next point about developing prime motivation: is focus on the greatest competitor. So another way to keep yourself motivated is to focus on the greatest competitor. Identify who is the biggest competition, and ask yourself, am I working as hard as them? And remember that only by working at your hardest will you have a chance to overcome your greatest competitor. My problem was that I was the greatest competitor.
So yeah, you had nobody really to.
There was no challenge for me. It was, I would show
Yeah.
up, I would win, I would go home, until I would get a little bit further, get past districts, obviously into OFSA, and I would compete against the province. Even then, but it's just one of those things where I never really had the motivation to focus on who was the best, because most of the time it was me. I know that's
Yeah.
I know, that sounds like super
Look at this guy over here.
yeah, super self-absorbed, but that was just the reality of it. I did not
Yeah.
there was nobody in my area who did the sport that I did, so by default I was the best.
Yeah.
And yeah, nobody even came close.
I mean, that's kind of what happens when you decide to do like a niche thing and nobody around you is like, you know, you get the advantage where you are the best, but also it's just like, okay, I have no competition. I also have no support.
It's like,
So
how do I better myself if I have no one to match myself up against?
at least nobody like nearby,
Yeah.
you know. And you get maybe that one opportunity like once a year,
Yeah,
you know.
once a year when I go to the city and I get to race all the fast kids who are
Yeah.
training all year round because their school has a track and field program that runs the whole year. They have I ran on a gravel track, right? Not even in like an actual track. I would have preferred a concrete track at least, but no, we had a gravel track. At least it was the proper length. I
Yeah.
believe it was 400 meters approximately, but no, it was a gravel track. You would run and rocks would fly behind you, hit the person behind you.
May
It
the fastest win.
honestly, yeah. You
Literally kick rocks.
you go. We had like a pair of starting blocks that we'd have. You'd have to like hammer them in with like a spike into the ground and make sure they wouldn't move. But like sometimes they would, and like the take off on your start and the blocks would go flying behind you. It was a mess.
Yeah.
Needless to say, I did not perform the right sport for the area that I was in, but
Yeah.
it was what I was good at, right? So it's what I did. Something I'm that I was able to do that I was actually taught when I was working with a sports psychologist is motivational cues. So a big part of staying motivated involves generating positive emotions associated with your efforts and achievement goals. So a way to keep those feelings is with motivational cues, such as inspirational phrases, photographs. I'll talk about what it was for me in a second here, but you want to look at it periodically and allow yourself to experience the emotions it creates in you. And these reminders and the emotions associated with them are going to inspire and motivate you to continue to work towards your goals. So for what that was for me, was on the bus ride to every track meet, I used to have like an audio file downloaded of when Usain Bolt broke the world set broke then set the world record for the 100-meter sprint. Was it 100 or 200? I know he has both records, so I'm not sure. Does he have the 200 anymore? I don't know. I don't remember.
I have that.
I mean,
Either or.
whatever. I haven't followed track and field pretty much since he retired, so because that's when I retired too. But no.
Similar legacy. Similar legacy.
Yeah. I didn't like being able to have an idol. Was definitely my biggest motivation because like obviously like I had that audio of him breaking the world record, obviously the announcers going crazy, the crowd going crazy, all that stuff, eliciting those emotions within myself, but also just focusing like I used to love Usain Bolt. Like I had his autobiography, I had his signature track and field spikes, I had what else did I have? Oh, I felt a sense of connection because our birthdays were his was like one day before mine. I was like, yeah, we're cosmically linked. We have to be, right?
Matt Usain Jones.
And also just because he's a tall guy. Tall guys are not usually sprinters. It's uncommon to see somebody tall and excel at sprinter. And being tall myself, I'm 6'3". I was 6'3" in high school. I haven't grown since high school. Being 6'3", being a sprinter, and being the best in my class, that was that level of relatability. Him also being tall, I'm like, okay, well, everything that he can do, I can do because we're similarly built. I have his track spike, so I have to run as fast as him. But
Zoom.
Yeah, literally. But yeah, that was sort of what I used to motivate myself. I used his achievements, experienced them vicariously, which we will talk about eventually. That's going to be that imagery, that visualization. But being able to experience vicariously Usain Bolt's achievements is what motivated me to go out and be like him, essentially. So something that I really struggled with was we talked about our long-term goals. But before you can achieve that long-term goal, that long-term goal is a series of short-term goals. And there's very few things that are more rewarding and motivating than setting a goal, putting the effort towards the goal, and then achieving the goal. It's great. The sense of accomplishment and putting the effort towards getting that validation is going to make you feel good. It's going to motivate you to strive higher. I wasn't great with setting goals. I was too big picture. I'd go, oh yeah. Actually, it's a good thing that I didn't push towards Tokyo 2020 because that never happened. I would have been so mad if I spent like when because yeah, I had that goal even before 2016. So that would have been like 6-7 years of training for something that gets postponed. I would have been furious. But no, setting
Is it
like
Tokyo 21 now? I don't know what's going on. I know the Euros got for soccer got postponed to the summer.
I think they're gonna try and brute force it and just do it anyways. But I believe, from what I've heard, they're not allowing any like foreigners to attend. It's just an entire Japanese crowd, which should be really interesting if that does happen. But we'll see with that. But yeah, setting goals, setting small goals, and being able to obviously achieve them, it feels great. But knowing what's a big goal and what's a large goal, like for me, it was, oh, I want to beat a personal best. I want to go to the next level of competition, rather than I just want to make my start, a fraction of a second faster. Something like that. Starting with the small goals, building up, and achieving that long goal essentially is going to increase that motivation when you do, along the line, achieve those small goals. Something, again, that you really should be doing if you want to motivate yourself is asking yourself daily questions. So very much like focusing on your competition, you want to be asking yourself, when you get up in the morning, what can I do to become the best athlete that I can be? And before you go to sleep, ask yourself, did I do everything possible today to become the best athlete I can be? These two questions are going to remind you daily of what your goals are and will challenge you to be motivated to do your best. I know for the most part, if I were to go to bed and say, did I do everything I could have done today? The answer is almost always no. Uh, it's kind of along those lines, especially when I talk to clients about training and they go, oh, I don't have time to train. It's like, well, you have an hour and a half to watch TV every day. You can use at least an hour of that to work out, do go for a run, go for a walk, something like that. Like, it's making excuses for yourself is going to hinder that motivation, because you're just going to fall back on those excuses every time. But just at least asking yourself and being aware of it. Did I do everything that I possibly could today to be the best that I could be in whatever it is that I'm trying to achieve? So that's the general basics of motivation. Before I lead into the next topic here, David, do you have anything else to add to that?
Um, I guess yeah. When it comes to, I guess, what we were discussing in regards to, asking those questions, those things can be applicable to really anything that you're trying to do for the most part. Like beginning your day with, like, what do I need to do to achieve this or do that? It's pretty important to kind of to ensure that that day is not, it's not necessarily wasted, but doesn't just go by with you not having a plan.
Yeah.
In order to achieve something, truthfully, like for myself, I always require some type of like pre-planning, like in regards to any situation. Whether it's something small or something big. Pre-planning your behavior is kind of like how you build habits over time. And then reflection afterwards is how you can be honest with yourself and determine, like, okay, am I on the right path? What needs to be adjusted?
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right.
And that just applies to anything, regardless of athletics.
So, being motivated, and being motivated to go out and actually do the stuff that you need to do is going to be largely affected by what we're going to talk about next here, and that's confidence. So confidence is basically the belief of one's ability to be successful. And this can be kind of observed through what we call a state or trait lens. So trait confidence represents the perception an individual has to be successful in general, whereas state represents the perception somebody has about their ability to be successful in a specific moment. And your confidence can kind of be defined by our perception of self-image, self-esteem, self-efficacy, and self-expectations. And we go into self-image here. So self-image relates to how we see ourselves and can be a big, big, big limiting factor when it comes to performance. And our self-image is kind of in this perpetuating cycle of causation. So our self-image, let's start at the top here, because it's one big cycle that keeps going. So our self-image is going to affect our attitude. So if we have a bad negative self-image of ourselves, we're probably going to lead with a negative attitude. That negative attitude is going to be responsible for creating our expectations. Chances are we're going to have poor expectations of ourselves. Those poor expectations are going to dictate how we behave. Now, if we're behaving poorly, that's going to negatively affect our performance. We're going to have poor performance. And then it is that poor performance that feeds into our poor self-image. And the cycle continues. You never want to be stuck in this negative self-image cycle. Obviously, you want to be in the positive self-image cycle. So positive self-image, positive attitude, positive expectations, positive performance, positive self-image. The cycle continues. The next sort of determinant of confidence here is self-esteem. Now, self-esteem is basically our sense of value and self-worth. This obviously has a big impact on our performance, and our self-image is kind of what makes up our self-esteem in a way. So poor self-image is going to lead to negative beliefs about ourselves, and in turn it's going to limit our confidence in performing tasks. We talk about self-efficacy, and this is a big one. So self-efficacy is kind of the belief we have in our own abilities, specifically our ability to meet the challenges ahead of us and complete the task successfully. And there are multiple determinants of self-efficacy. The first one is going to be performance outcomes. Now, positive and negative experiences are going to influence the ability to perform a given task. If you've performed a task previously, you're going to feel more likely to feel competent and perform it similarly. So again, this is the concept of practicing. You do something once, you're going to feel better about doing it the next time you do it. The second component here we have is vicarious experiences. So this kind of involves watching other people successfully complete a task. And you can develop self-efficacy through other people's performances. You can watch another person perform and then compare your competence with their competence, similar to how I was kind of motivated by Usain Bolt. I would go, oh, okay, well, I've got everything going on that he's got going on, so if he can do it, I can do it. That's how I feel more confident in my ability to perform the tasks that I need to perform. Basically, just watching somebody do something well is going to make you feel more comfortable doing it. The third we got here is social persuasion. This is basically just receiving positive verbal feedback while undertaking a complex task. It's going to persuade a person to believe that they have the skills and capabilities to succeed. It works on any age, but the earlier it's administered, the more it's likely to encourage the building of self-efficacy. So telling your kids, you can be anything you want to be. Even though it might be a slight lie, depending on the kid, of course, at least allowing them to believe that they can go out and do anything they want is going to be a big confidence booster. Obviously, you never want to tell your kid, you're going to fail in life. You're only going to be able to do this job. You're never going to be anything good at anything else. That's going to drastically destroy your confidence, your self-image, your self-esteem, all that stuff. So social persuasion, positive verbal feedback is how we're going to increase that self-efficacy. The next one we have is emotional and psychological states. So the emotional, physical, and psychological well-being of a person can influence how they feel about their personal abilities and situations. So if somebody is, already depressed, chances are they're not going to feel very confident about going in and performing something successfully because they're already in that psychological state of failure, essentially. And then the last one here we have is imaginal experiences and visualization, coming later. Imaginal experiences is basically someone attempting to portray their goals as achievable. So essentially going into your mind and performing the task in your head, getting all the sensory additions of that task is going to help boost your confidence, again, in completing that task. Another component here, so we went over self-image, self-esteem, and self-efficacy. A big one here is going to be self expectation. So, your expectations are what you anticipate to be an outcome. So, personal expectations are the internal standards that all of us set for ourselves. All of us have expectations that we try and meet every day. It's how you plan to measure your own success and failure. So, you see these as facts and it becomes part of your belief system. Now, something that's really, really, really going to manipulate how your expectations can come into fruition, it's going to be what we call the self-fulfilling prophecy. And I'm sure some of you have probably heard at least this term thrown around, self-fulfilling prophecy. Basically what this means is the self-fulfilling prophecy is a situation brought about when you're expecting something to happen. It's actually going to cause it to happen. So basically when your expectations become reality. The biggest issue with self-fulfilling prophecy is the negative self-fulfilling prophecy, and very much like the negative self-image that you don't want to get stuck in. You don't want to get stuck in a negative self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you begin with a negative expectation of yourself, that negative expectation influences how you prepare for your performance and how you treat yourself. Then that treatment is going to affect your performance, and your performance will then conform to your original expectations. So if you start with poor expectations, you think, oh, I'm going to go this, but I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail. It's going to suck. You're going to go in with that mindset. Your body is then going to do everything it can to basically meet that mindset, and chances are, yeah, you're gonna fail. At that point, your original expectations have been met, and that is the cycle of the self-fulfilling prophecy. So you want to be in a positive self-fulfilling prophecy where you come in with good expectations. Your body's going to do the best it can, increase your chance in to be able to create a better outcome, essentially. So, some strategies for building self-confidence. You want to be aware of what's called the thought-action relationship. So that's basically your thoughts affect your actions affect your thoughts, just like everything we've talked about so far. So you want to act confidently, because remember, your thoughts are going to follow your actions. This is when people say fake it until you make it. This is basically what they mean. If you act confident enough, chances are you're going to be successful. Even if you really didn't know what you were doing, you pretended like you did, and psychologically it helps you perform the task. And you not only want to act confidently, but think confidently. Remember, your actions are going to follow your thoughts. If you think something is going to go well, chances are you're going to make it go well. If you think something's going to go poorly, it's probably going to go poorly. Which brings us to what I want to call, not what I want to call, this is a thing, an actual terminology in sports psychology, is the 3Ps. So we had the 3Ds, now we have the 3Ps. There's a lot of fun little acronyms here. So the 3Ps basically relates to the law of dominant thought. Now what this is basically, like I've talked about before, your actions are going to follow your thoughts. So your most prevalent thought is what your mind is going to choose to remember, and that's going to affect what your body does. So the 3Ps, the first one being positive expectancies. So what you expect is what you get. When we talked about the self-fulfilling prophecy, you want to go in with good expectations, you're going to get a good result. Second P is going to be positive affirmations. So what you think is what you get. Thoughts follow actions. You think you're going to be confident, you're going to act confident. And then the third P here we have is positive self-talk. So what you say is what you do. Right? You want to be always positive. I know it's not easy to be always positive, but if you want to go in and perform something the best that you can be, you need to have those 3Ps, those 3 positives: expectancies, affirmations, and self-talk. That's going to increase your ability to perform maximally and have a successful outcome, essentially.
I think something important there, though, is when it comes to all these things, even when it comes to the fake it till you make it approach, you can only do it so much because you need at least like the smallest shred of belief.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise, like continually telling yourself, even though you don't believe it itself, becomes like discouraging because you're not really portraying, I guess, your authentic self to a certain extent. You know.
Yeah. Okay, so that's confidence. Which brings us to something that's greatly going to affect everything we talked about before. David's going to lead into that. So that's going to be arousal, stress, and anxiety. So David, tell us a little bit about that.
So I guess when it comes to we've spoken about how to be motivated, how to be mentally, I guess, prepared for a performance. Then when it comes to that, we also have to discuss the things that hinder our performance and or enhance, and that's going to be arousal, stress, and anxiety for the most part around our performance and just kind of just general life in general for the most part. When it comes to what arousal in sport is, it's essentially a blend of physiological, so stuff that's going on in the body, and psychological, what's going on in your head, activity in a person, and refers to like their levels of motivation, alertness, excitement, experienced at a specific particular moment, or kind of like over an extended period of time, depending on the activity or what it is. So, in regards to how I guess arousal affects performance, we can kind of think of arousal as in some ways it's adrenaline. It's some type of emotional or physiological reaction that just kind of happens as a result of something occurring, whether it be stress, whether it be something positive. That's essentially what we're talking about. How it can affect performance is it can affect it in a positive and a negative way. It can increase muscle tension, which is necessary to a certain extent during performance, but not too much to the point where it starts making coordination difficult. That really becomes a problem when that level of muscle tension or other physiological factors starts becoming a little bit too much for the athlete to handle or individual to handle. It also affects our attention and concentration in a positive or a negative way. It can your attention when you do feel that sensation of arousal or just emotional, I guess, increase or physiological increases, you do tend to really focus in on the task that you're doing. I guess an example could be whether you have an important game or you have an exam or something else or a stressful period at work. When those emotions, start to come in, you do tend to get like really focused because that task matters, So that's one thing. In regards to athletics or even just general life in general, you might start gravitating towards maybe some unhelpful cues or negative self-talk, when under pressure or when you feel this arousal. Or you can also take it in the sense that you might realize, oh, these negative cues are starting to come into my head, or this negative self-talk is appearing. So I need to deal with this to make sure it doesn't affect my performance in regards to what I'm doing. And again, also on the negative side, you might start to develop some performance worries or worries from other aspects of your life that start to compile as you start feeling a little bit more under pressure. This kind of comes into something called the inverted U hypothesis, which is meant to illustrate this relationship between a necessary amounts of arousal and performance. So, how I can describe it is, I don't know, Matt, if you're gonna pop it on the screen, but I can. It's simple enough where I can describe it in the sense that we have a y and we have our x-axis. Here on our y-axis, we have performance, and it's on a scale of high up here and low down here. On our x-axis, we have low at like I guess the origin point of the graph, and then we have high all the way at the other end on the right. The actual graph is shaped like a U. So when we look at it, you can see that low performance and low arousal are kind of correlated, which would mean that if you have a low amount of, I guess, emotional or physiological stimulation or something, that kind of means essentially you don't care. And if you don't care, you're probably not going to perform at your best because you just don't have anything motivating you or pushing you to actually want to perform at your best. This U will start to gradually go up and up and up, indicating that the more arousal you get or the more emotional stimulation you get, the more the better performance you're going to face. Oh, I just saw you popped it up now. But it comes to a point, as you can probably see on the screen, where there's this fine line of optimal arousal, and as you become maybe a little bit more emotionally involved or just over, I guess, aroused in that sense, your performance will begin to drop, which we can kind of correlate to as the pressure becomes too much and your ability to focus and kind of keep this under control just becomes too great for you to manage. So The whole point of that is to show that, for the most part, everybody will kind of fall. There's a certain amount of emotional excitation or just physiological excitation that you need in order to get the job done. But too much will result in you just, I guess, succumbing to the pressure of whatever you're trying to do. And again, this model can really be relevant in all aspects of our life, not just even like mentally preparing for an event, but even the body as well. Like too much of a good thing is can be a bad thing. Too much, you would need to train a certain amount to grow muscle. But there's the principle of diminishing returns. If you start doing too much, you run into the issue of your joints starting to break down, and you're just not getting anything for that extra effort, and that kind of applies here as well. Um, and that kind of moves into the fact that some people, even though the graph is shaped like this, some people will respond better to different levels of arousal depending on the person. And that's very particular. In fact, you'll see with athletes, some people, they respond well under great amounts of pressure. If they have a game-winning shot, if it's the finals of an event, that is when the stakes are highest, they're high enough, and the levels of arousal are high enough where that's when it brings the best out of them. Well, for some people, that's the worst thing in the world. That level of pressure just becomes unmanageable, and they can't really deal with it. So for them, lower amounts of arousal or lower amounts of, I guess, emotional or physiological kind of commitment is kind of their even ground where they feel like, okay, this is where I do my best when the pressure isn't that high. But again, it's kind of individual to every person. And I guess when we think of that, like arousal and I guess pressure, stress, has to be kind of an important factor when we discuss that. When we think of stress, we can also kind of think of stress on a spectrum. A lot of people, they've probably heard the term eustress, which is, I guess, stress that is positive and pushes us to do good things. I know I used the example earlier, but if you have a family and you have kids to raise and people that depend on you, that is a certain level of good stress that pushes you to do the things that you need to do to go out, go to work, provide for your family. You know, Distress could be, you could actually probably take the same scenario and let's say you're struggling financially, and you're struggling to provide for the people around you. That level of stress becomes negative and it starts hurting your emotional state. So yeah, we got eustress, then we got distress, but we can also add in a lack of stress and too much stress that kind of factors into the equation, and that's going to be hypostress, or simply just boredom or not caring, and hyperstress, which is just too much stress in general, and that could be good or bad stress. And with this kind of model, this kind of, I guess, four quadrant model, you can kind of pin to see what levels of stress you experience, and where, and just kind of to see where that affects you, and how you react to that. I guess when we look at the model, I could probably pick a scenario where it could go either way. I don't know, Matt, you got any ideas? If, I guess, we're looking at like that four quadrant model.
Let's talk about like maybe a mix of. I can't think of any scenarios that are gonna be kind of a mix. Like, I think they're all fairly like
I
singular
keep
for
going back
me.
to that like family situation,
Yeah.
like, let's say you have a good family, and I guess you're leaning more towards that eustress, where you have like people that you care about that are good for you,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe again, maybe work is difficult, and even though the stress is positive, you're maybe in a hyper stress state, where again, yeah, the stress is good, but there's like external stress that's also making that become a, I guess, negative type of stress.
Yeah.
And you could even go into the opposite direction. You may have a good family, but maybe you care about other things. Maybe you're more career oriented, and in that result, like, you are, I guess, in a hypo stress state, or just lack of care. And that can kind of result you to do some pretty shitty things in that regard. So again, like, stress is not I guess, cut and clean good and bad. There's just certain levels, and certain, I guess, ratios that people can tolerate that's very individual to everybody else, that can motivate you to be your best, or just start to, I guess, degrade your health over an extended period of time. So moving on, we can actually look at stress and kind of determine it and split it up into different stages to better understand how we can manage it, and at what point we can maybe catch it and try and make it a positive thing. Stage one, when it comes to the stress cycle, is going to be environmental demand. And what that essentially means is something in our environment is going to trigger physiological and psychological stress processes to occur. This can be emotions, feeling frightened, feeling under pressure, and just actual like hormones and physical chemicals in the body that raise things like your blood pressure, your heart rate, and just kind of prime you physically to do something about that environment, that external stress that's coming in. The second stage is its perception of the demand, or perception of the actual stress. And what this is going to do is, like, now you and your like slash your body is going to try and interpret to this demand and see, like, okay, is what is occurring a serious threat, physically or mentally, or is it not? And from there, that's what I kind of you leave into the stress response, which is physical and physiological, which what I was talking about. Your body is going to respond with muscle tension, increased heart rate. Your attention focuses into that threat. Worry, doubt can also just essentially trigger your fight or flight response. Are you going to meet this stress and handle it, or are you going to try and move away from this stress in order to put yourself in a better position? And then after you've responded, you'll move into stage four, which is essentially behavioral consequences. So at this point, I guess you've already taken a certain course of action, after which you or your body will interpret this as, was this the right course of action? Was it not? And essentially learn from this and realize, okay, are we going to do this again, or are we not going to do this again? And just use this as a learning opportunity for the next time you face that stress again. And if you do face it again, you probably will have a different mentality if you've learned from it, or you'll probably do the same thing. It just depends how you dealt with it. When it comes to just general practical takeaways from all of that, in regards to, okay, I understand how stress works. I understand, it's different for everybody else, and I understand everybody needs certain levels of stress or arousal to get the job done. We can kind of look at a couple different things that we can practically apply. The first thing is identify where you personally perform the best in regards to levels of arousal you experience. And here we're not just talking about, like athletic performance, but just general life in general, how much, I guess, like emotional, like drive do you need, or passion, before it becomes overwhelming. From here, you can try and change your mental state or your environment to get you in that necessary zone for you to do your best. Again, this is going to vary from person to person. Some people, they like listening to music to relax, reciting specific phrases like we talked about earlier. In Matt's case, it was watching the Usain Bolt video, or the audio clip, to I guess get him ready for his events. While other people, they like to be seriously like hyped up, which actually is pretty much what Matt was doing in this scenario. I do know some people who bodybuild, where they'll watch like old Ronnie Coleman videos, or like Blood and Guts, or like Dorian Yates and stuff like that, and that's how they prepare for the gym. For myself, I don't personally like to do that. I'm very um, I go. I know what I'm doing, and I just do it. I check off the box, and I'm done. And I don't really require that extra bit of, I guess, motivation to push me through what I would need to do. But again, that's up to you to decide, like, what gets me in that specific state, because then you kind of realize, okay, now I know what mindset I have to be in to be my best. If your goal is to be your best. Another thing that we can do is becoming aware of how situation or environmental factors affect how you perceive stress. So we're not even looking at like what causes the stress. We're looking at, like, okay, what will shift my mentality in regards to how do I see the stress and how much of a threat do I perceive it as. And again, some things, they may seem more stressful under certain conditions. A good example is you're probably going to feel more relaxed or prepared for a test if you get to class early. versus if you get there 5 minutes into the test and you have a teacher yelling at you and you don't even know what you're doing and you're trying to desperately scramble to get started. Um, One is probably going to be a lot more conducive to doing well than the other. So there you can probably learn, like, okay, probably getting to class early would have been the smarter decision, for next time, to make sure like I'm in a good state of mind to do well. And because we can consider, like, you probably had the same preparation regardless of what you did, but what one will set you up for success more than the other one. When you kind of become aware of these external factors and internal factors as well, it can be also your mindset or thoughts that kind of pop up, when challenging times arrive. You can determine like how they affect your stress levels, and you can learn to avoid or learn how to cope with this type of stress to the point where it's no longer detrimental. So that's important, learning what your cues are. Third, recognize signs of becoming anxious slash becoming stressed. This kind of extends outside of athletics and into your daily life. Everyone could probably benefit from becoming a little bit more self-aware in regards to what triggers our anxiety or stress levels to spike. That's just for general happiness and general just taking care of yourself for the most part. Only once you actually kind of recognize what causes these spikes can you really determine like what action you need to take to remain calm when these triggers occur, whether you should avoid them altogether, or even if the stress or anxiety is unwarranted and there isn't even a threat. Because again, sometimes our body will play tricks on us, or stuff that happened in the past has conditioned us to look at something and treat it as a threat. A lot of people, like even myself more in the past, who struggle with like social anxiety and stuff like that. It just takes time to understand, like, okay, this like I am not, like, if something occurs, like, I don't know, public speaking or something, and that stresses you out, I guess it takes some time to recognize, like, okay, this is not a threat to me. I can calm down, or maybe you just need more practice to do it. um I had a election example here that I wrote down. Some players, they like extra practice on certain skills before a game, while others, it kind of makes them feel like it makes them anxious, and they have a higher tendency to overthink what typically kind of becomes natural. And that's for everybody to kind of decide. Like, okay, this on the one hand makes me feel like I'm more prepared, or does it make me feel like I'm preparing to fail to a certain extent? I don't know, Matt. Have you ever, when it came to prep for like an event or something, did you find like you benefited from extra practice, or were you like, I'm gonna do what I do, I'm just gonna do it once and get it right?
So yeah, I am more of the um, don't focus on the prep, just go ahead and just do it, um, type deal. Like not even just with my sports, but when I was performing music as well. Um, just going out and I don't know, like at a certain point, I stopped getting stressed by things. I think it's once I started succeeding
Mm-hmm.
in doing things is when I stopped becoming stressed at all, and I only focused on just going out and just performing. Even like taking tests and stuff. People would, they'd be killing themselves with stress trying to study last minute, and I would just go into the test with the kind of mindset of everything I know. Everything I
Yeah.
don't know, trying to cram it in my brain 10 minutes before the test is not going to make me know it any better. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to go write down what I know. If I don't know it, sucks. So be it. I'm
Yeah.
not I'm not
It
going to
is what it
focus on it. I'm
is.
not going to stress it.
Yeah. That's a good mindset to have in regards, because sometimes when you start to cram in stuff that you don't know, it limits your ability to just actually perform at your best with what you could.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's probably best to do a task well rather than trying to do multiple tasks to like subpar.
It's like if I'm going to leave a bunch of test answers blank because I don't know the answer, I'm going to make sure the ones that I do answer are worth full points.
That's fair. That's fair. I guess that kind of extends, outside of life, when, kind of learning how to stay in your lane to a
Yeah.
certain extent, and realizing, like, to achieve mastery on something, you have to focus on something specifically. Otherwise, you never really achieve it.
Yeah.
And that just kind of requires a certain amount of like discipline and awareness.
Like something that
Um,
sorry, something that I just found funny in school. I was always a very quick test taker. Like I was always every time there's a test or an exam, I was always the first one done. Um, in both secondary and post secondary education, I blasted through. Sometimes it was just because I knew everything, and I'm just a fast test taker. But what people do, and I'm sure you can even experience this as well, when we get like those big exams with like a long list of like multiple choice questions, and like you have the Scantron, and you have to you have 60 multiple choice questions, you have to go through them all. People will spend like my theory, at least when it comes to multiple choice on an exam, is if you're spending longer than 90 seconds per question, you're thinking too hard, you're stressing too hard about it. Just skip it, move on. If you don't know the answer, you can leave it. If you come up with the answer later, you can go back to it. But what often I'll see people doing is they'll go down their Scantron, checking off A, B, C, or D, or E, depending on the test. And then they'll hit a random multiple choice question, one of 60, right? It's just a little tiny fraction, and they'll stare at their page for 10 minutes trying to think, what is the answer to this multiple choice question? Like, what am I going to do if I don't answer this? It's like, don't stress about it. Just keep moving. Again, if you don't know it then in the test, you probably won't know it at any other point in the test. But just keep moving. Maybe it'll come to you later. Maybe you'll see another question that engages that memory. But I don't ever see the point in just staring at a page and trying to focus on something that I don't know, and trying to will it into existence that I somehow all of a sudden know it.
Yeah, I've had those ones where I just start, you get caught up on a question and you're just really trying to think of it, but you just kind of, I guess the common sense kind of comes to you a little bit later, where it's just like, you okay, I can't waste more time on this. I might as well just do the stuff that I actually know, rather than waste time on something where it's, at the end of the day, it's probably just going to be a toss up anyways. In regards to whether you get it right or not.
I'm sure I'm not the only person who will do the mental math to calculate exactly how many marks you need to pass the exam, and just making sure as long as you're over that amount, you can sort of sacrifice other questions that you don't know. At least that's what happened. It's like, well, I need at least like 50 points here to pass. I'm gonna make sure,
you just want to make sure you don't get stuck on a question that's worth like 3.
It's like I see this big full page 10 mark answer just staring at me. I'm like, okay, so I can either get 10 multiple choice questions right and leave this blank, or I can just stare at this for the next 4 hours.
Essentially.
And I have definitely left full page answers blank before. I'm not even gonna lie. It is what it is. Yeah,
it is what it is.
Literally go with the flow. Don't stress yourself out, and just be easy. That's it.
Yeah. The final thing that I needed to mention was developing routine when it comes, and that kind of will depend on what the individual is trying to do. It can involve some mental training, and just building confidence with your ability to kind of cope with stress. And again, that's another concept that's really important outside of athletics. In order for changes to occur, you have to commit to some sort of habit or routine that helps you prepare for facing the stress you're preparing for. I'm a very firm believer in that, in preparation before doing something challenging. I just find like that's the only way that you can kind of get a handle on what to a certain extent is in your control but kind of out of your control. This can be meditation / visualization, which we're going to talk about, reciting mantras, and just making sure you have time to relax, or talking to other people about how you can better deal with the stress. Whatever way that helps you prepare better is probably better than just leaving it up to fate and hoping that it's going to go well. For the most part, at least in some situations where if you have some control over it, it's better to take some action. Once you start becoming better at kind of dealing with the stress, you'll slowly start to build that confidence that you can handle the stress, and eventually you'll likely be able to handle like the stress easily enough, or just handle more stress in general. It's kind of the same principle as training when it comes to progressive overload. You may not be very strong at this moment, or this moment in time, but eventually, as you expose yourself more to this over time, you just adapt and you become better at what you're doing. It's the same thing when it comes to to overcoming like mental obstacles and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, it just literally practice dealing with certain difficulties in life. You know, sometimes like if it's a competition, in some cases for people it's difficult because you only get that opportunity once, but it kind of is what it is. You just you got to take what you can get and just move along with it.
Yeah. One thing that I can definitely relate with when we talk about which level of arousal you're most comfortable in. For me, I find I do my best work when I am under extreme amounts of stress. But over the years, I can obviously I've identified that those conditions are what pushes me to succeed. But I always have the confidence that whatever's going, like, even though like things are stressful and there's a high chance of, not even a high chance of failure, but the concept of failure, I just know, I believe in myself 100% through the entire thing, even if I'm under an incredible amount of stress, that things will work out always. And
Mm-hmm.
so far things have worked out. um like
Yeah.
I'm always firm in my beliefs in myself, um even even when other people around me might not necessarily be firm in beliefs of myself, especially, but or even
Mm-hmm.
themselves. But being able to identify where you work best and knowing that you're gonna perform, you're gonna get the results that you want, even though all the odds are stacked against you, I think is definitely my mental skill that I've kind of perfected over my life so far. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like in school, all my best essays were written like the night before. Um,
That's fair. For myself, I know it's the absolute opposite.
like
The minute like the pressure starts getting to me, whether it was athletics, whether it's been school, like the overall quality of my work goes down. You know, I've always found that pacing myself, even if you know I don't have that same efficiency, is just overall I the end product ends up being better for the most part. You know, and that's something just like that I it's so like deeply imprinted in me where it gets irritating when even this week I got like four assignments due and I know they're going to be a cram every single one of them, but you know it is what it is, just got to plan better next time.
but no, I identify as a professional procrastinator. um like I think all of my best work has been done just extremely last minute. I don't have, because it forces me to dig in and actually do what's necessary.
Yeah.
Because I when we talk about motivation, if I'm given 2 weeks to write a paper, I don't have the motivation to start at the beginning of those 2 weeks. Like, I'm only motivated when I have the fear of failure, which, when we talk about motivation before, and we talked about those underachievers who try to avoid failure rather than try to better themselves. Perhaps I'm a low achiever when it comes to uh, academics and stuff like that. But um,
C's get degrees.
yeah, I think, well, I think, and I don't, well, maybe some people can relate to having to go to school with intrinsic motivation, but for me it was always, I'm very extrinsically motivated because I need this degree to be able to do the job that I want. That's why I'm here. I'm not here to become a better person out of it. I'm here because you're offering something. Why else would I pay this much amount of money for a piece of paper that just says I'm qualified to talk about the things that I can talk about? You know,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I was extremely extrinsically motivated, and I was just like, I want the end result. I want the reward. I'm not here for any other reason. Obviously, I want to learn, but I'm gonna be totally honest. Most of the stuff I learned in school, not applicable.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything I've learned has been from experiences and other people outside of the academic circle, through their
Mm-hmm.
experiences as well. But yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely extrinsically motivated when it comes to that stuff, and I think that's why uh, I'm more than willing to wait until the last minute to kind of let the stress mold me in a way, or at least push me towards achievement. Because at that point, I don't want to fail.
Hmm.
It's one day left to do the assignment. I have to do it now. So I'm going to put all of my effort, all of my mental effort into doing that assignment, because the alternative is a really bad alternative.
Yeah. All right. I think this kind
Which
of leads into
the
mental
next,
toughness and hardiness.
yeah, which I would say that's basically the gist of that. So when we talk about mental toughness, it's basically the ability to resist, manage, and overcome doubts, worries, concerns, and circumstances that prevent you from succeeding. So, like I was talking about, even when all the odds are stacked against me, I can block all of that out and just be safe in my belief that everything will be fine eventually. Um, but athletes, coaches, sports psychologists, they've consistently implicated mental toughness as one of the most important psychological characteristics related to success in sports, because it is being able to face those doubts, those concerns head on, and just push them aside and keep moving. Um, that's really what's going to help you to excel, help you to exceed. And when we talk about what hardiness is, so hardiness is basically a personality trait that's characterized by resilience and the ability to cope effectively with stress, like we've talked about so far. And there's three traits that make up hardiness, and that's going to be challenge, control, and commitment. Now, the three C's. We have the three D's, the three P's, and now we got the three C's. So we talked about challenge. So challenge means seeing problems or stressors as challenges and opportunities. So individuals with this trait are going to accept change as a part of life and don't expect life to be easy. We talk about control. It means not seeing yourself as a helpless victim who's at the mercy of all these external stressors. It's involving having an internal control, or in other words, feeling that you can influence the course of your life and take actions that improve your chances of achieving your goals. Now, individuals with this trait are generally more optimistic and hopeful and feel a sense of personal power and their ability to control everything around them, right? And then the last one here is we got commitment. So having a sense of purpose and meaning in life. So people with this trait don't just survive; they go through life or go through life with little direction. Instead, they thrive off of it, right? So being able to challenge, control, and commit are all going to feed into that mental toughness, that hardiness, that ability to look stress in the face and say, I don't need you. I can perform perfectly even though you're there. Any doubt, clear all doubt from your mind. Any concerns from yourself or other people might have in you as well. It's one thing to not believe in yourself, but it's another thing to have people around you not believe in you either. Which is definitely that verbal persuasion. If people tell you you're probably not going to succeed, chances are you're going to believe you're not going to succeed, and then you won't succeed. So being able to have that hardiness and mental toughness to block all of that negativity out is going to be good, not just for athletic and sports performance, but just general life performance in all aspects of our lives. Which, what was our next topic here? So something that we really it's kind of a part of mental toughness here is the ability to concentrate. So David, why don't you go into that? Actually, while you're doing that, I really need to go to the bathroom as well. So
All right,
lead into concentration. I'll be back in just a sec.
Okay, so in regards to our talk about mental toughness and just overall hardiness, in order to even be in a state where that's possible, we kind of need to be concentrated enough on the tasks that we're doing, or I guess treat it as important enough for us to even require that hardiness in general. In regards to like sports performance terms, we're kind of talking about where even in life in general, we're referring to what or where our mental efforts are kind of focusing on. An ideal level of concentration for performance involves focusing on appropriate cues. These can be the actual like task at hand, or mental cues to kind of just keep you focused in general. We want to make sure that this concentration is maintained over time. We want to make sure that we're able to avoid any distractions that can pull our concentration away and result in a decrease in performance. And we also, even, I've spoken as if like this concentration has to be very focused, rigid, keeping out all distractions. We also do need some certain level of mental flexibility, where you can kind of shift your focus when necessary, which is pretty important with sports in the sense that they're dynamic. You're not doing like one single repetition or one single action. You have to react to the external conditions around you. And yeah, your external environment is changing, so you need to be able to react. For other sports, maybe such as like powerlifting or Olympic weightlifting and stuff like that, they're dynamic to a sense, but it's one individual repetition. So in that case, greater levels of concentration are probably required to, since there's not too much variability, but you still require some type of flexibility to just adapt to when things don't go according to plan for the most part. When it comes to maintaining that concentration, obviously we need concentration and focus, and there's four types of attentional focus that we can appeal to, or that are constantly going on when we're trying to perform a task. The example that I have here is a soccer player who's about to take a penalty kick. So there's going to be four areas of focus that grab their attention. There's going to be broad external, broad internal, narrow external, and narrow internal. When it comes to the narrow, that is when the individual is focusing on the like specific task, while the broad is focusing more on the external circumstances or the environment. So in regards to the case of the the penalty kick, the broad internal is going to be paying attention to the field, the wind blowing around them, this general surrounding area where the field is, like the trees in the background, spectators, all that type of stuff, and just it's overall just being aware of your just general surroundings for the most part. When it comes to broad internal, so we're still not necessarily focusing on the specific task. Your focus shifts from the external environment now to maybe analyzing your run up position, like what angle are you going to run out to kick the ball, and maybe what kicking technique you're going to use. Now we've shifted from external environment now to, or broad external environment to now narrow external. Narrow external is going to be looking at the ball and maybe looking at the position of the goalkeeper. So we're now focusing more on the specific task, but our attention is still on the externals. Not you, but the ball and the goalkeeper that you have to shoot past. When now we move into our final one, being narrow internal, which is now we're visualizing what we're actually going to do, and that can include picking what corner we're going to shoot the ball at to make sure it goes in, and exactly how the shot is going to go. Essentially, visualizing how what our success is going to be. For the most part, are we going to be able to make the shot, or are we not going to be able to make the shot? For the most part. So those are our four types of focus. Something to always kind of keep in mind when it comes to athletics and concentration is getting into a scenario where sometimes we choke. In regards to, I guess when we think about choking, we can all probably think of a time where stress was high and there was pressure for us to perform, but we simply just didn't have the sufficient mental focus or the ability to perform the way that we know we're capable of, but the pressure just kind of got to us. When it comes to choking, it's not simply just something that occurs. We can analyze it and break it down to exactly like what are the conditions that result in that performance decrease, and work from there to ensure this doesn't occur again, to make sure that next time we're able to do what we're able to do. When it comes to, I guess, this analysis, we can first start off with the conditions that kind of lead to choking. Usually that's going to be, when it comes to sports, your important competition. Maybe that's just, I guess, the general broad sense. You go in thinking, okay, this is really important, I can't mess this up. Maybe a very specific moment in the game. Maybe you have, I don't know, an open net, 90th minute, it's 1-1, and you sky the ball. That's a very clear instance of choking. And then also the external pressure of your coach, your peers, and also maybe like your parents or the people who are there watching. These are all things that can maybe result in the pressure just being so overwhelming where you're like, ah, shit, I can't deal with it. So those are the I guess the conditions that can lead to it. There's physical changes and attentional changes that can occur as a result of that, that results in you choking. When it comes to our physical changes, because of all those, I guess, pre-described conditions that lead to choking, we got increased muscle tension, increased breathing rate, and racing heart rate, which again, these are all aren't necessarily bad things. These are actually pretty good when it comes to getting nutrients to the body in order to do what we need to do. But in too high amounts, they can kind of result in you just not having the the ability to focus on what you're doing. So that's the physical changes. And then when it comes to the attentional changes, or I guess we could say psychological changes, as a result of those choking conditions that we talked about, we result in maybe your focus, you not taking into the big picture, or not taking the big picture into account, and just shifting to internal focus, just switching to narrow focus and not maybe taking into consider your surroundings, and that which overall just reduces your ability to, I guess, adapt to those situations. Your attention might shift to, oh man, I better not miss this shot, or my coach is going to be disappointed with me. Everybody's gonna be disappointed with me. Maybe there's a scout watching me and they're going to think I'm trash. So, but you forget maybe that this isn't the only opportunity you'll have to impress those people, or they already think you're a good player. And that one instance isn't going to be something that makes them think that you're no longer good. But because of those conditions that lead to choking, we kind of lose sight of that, and we let this negative self-talk kind of get to us. And what that results in overall is our timing and coordination can kind of be offset because our mind is in a different place. We can have literal muscle, like too much tightness and actual fatigue from that overall stress or that fear of failure. Rushing is often actually something that occurs in sport, but outside of sport, that you have to just get it over with before, instead of doing it to the best of your ability. And you're just maybe being unable to reel in those negative thoughts, and I guess reinforce those positive, like, self cues, self talk, that you can achieve what you're trying to do, and that all results in you choking and just not being able to perform as well as you can. Overall, we can kind of attribute choking to not just, again, something that happens, but maybe in just an inability to prepare ahead of time for all these cues, or all these possible conditions that can occur, that will occur, or might occur. We just didn't prepare ahead of time sufficiently. Now that we've kind of talked about, concentration, how choking, what all that kind of looks like, we can now look at how can we actually improve concentration and make sure that we are focused and that we're able to do the task that we're trying to do.
So sorry, before we jump into that, I just want to sort of bring another sort of anecdote in here in regards to choking and stress levels being mounted. So in track and field, in like the sprints, when you're starting, a thing that can happen is the false start, right? Somebody goes before the gun, and that's a false start. The problem with false starts is when one person false starts, okay, everyone has to reset. So already, like, you're already like in that deep concentration. You're waiting for the gun to go off, and you're trying to get the fastest reaction possible. So you're already so deeply concentrated, like it's almost like when you're on the blocks, like you can't even hear anything else around you. That's how concentrated you are. You are just solely focused on waiting for that gun. You're feeling your bodies, your muscles. You're trying to explode out of that block as fast as possible. Like, you are deep in there. Now, what happens when somebody false starts is that concentration is now broken, because now you got to do it again. The problem now is how false starts work in track and field is, if one person false starts, that's fine. Everyone goes resets. If somebody false starts again, regardless of who it is, it doesn't even have to be the person who false started the first time, you're disqualified. So even if you weren't the guy who false started the first time, if you false start the second time, you are disqualified regardless. So now,
I'm not really sure how that makes sense.
It doesn't. It's really stupid, but
Why would you? That's. I
but
don't.
but now you have the pressure of, oh shit, I better not false start, and now you're just hyper like you're not as focused because now you have that in the back of your mind is if I screw up, I'm out of the competition, I'm done, I go home. So now now you're scared essentially sitting on those blocks. Your immediate concentration was already broken. Now you're scared. You have that extra level of added stress. And what some people will actually do is they'll false start on purpose, to kind of
Throw
destroy,
everybody else out.
yeah, just destroy the mental
Yeah.
focus of the rest of their competition, because they know they're gonna false start, so they don't even care with the first gun. They know they're gonna go before it anyways, so they could care less. But now everyone else is like, damn, whoever false starts now is out. So I better. And like usually, what'll actually happen then is people will not be as quick on the start because you never want to jump the gun. You want to be like you just play it safe, right? It's almost like,
Yeah.
well, I don't know, when I relate it to tennis, obviously professional tennis players probably don't have this issue because they're consistent with their serves, but it's like all my first serve will be, I'll put full effort into it. I want it to be a really good serve. It'll be a heater down the court. It hits the net. You get two serves, before it becomes a point for the opponent. So the first serve hits the net. All right, now the added pressure. I better not mess up the second serve. So I'm gonna do like a really nice, easy lob across the net to my opponent because like the alternative is I give him a point.
Yeah.
Obviously, professional tennis players, they don't have that issue because they're consistent. But as an amateur tennis player, I have that issue because I don't train my serves. I show up every Sunday and I hit the ball over the net, hopefully, and go home.
Hopefully it goes over and I win the game.
Exactly. But being able to concentrate, especially after you've already screwed up, I guess, yeah, even all the track and fields, because you can fault in pretty much all the track and field events. Because I used to do long jump as well.
Yeah.
I did long jump, I did high jump. Long jump, if you just step like an inch over the line, that's a fault. I can't even remember if you get to try again. I think because you get two jumps, I think that counts as your first jump. So like now the second one, it's like you got to make it count. So you might even end up jumping early because now you are aware. As well as like high jump, you hit the bar, you get to try again, but the next time you hit the bar, you're out of that
Yeah.
that height class. So being
Again,
able to
anything that disrupts that concentration is just like for your second attempt, you're more likely than not going to perform as well as you possibly could have.
right. So then I guess going off of that, then how do we improve our concentration?
So there's a couple. I'm gonna first speak about, let's say, improving concentration specific for, let's say, a task or the sport. I'm not going to say with a sport, and that's going to be physically practicing the skills and scenarios you face in your sport or task you're faced with, just in general. That can be for, I don't know. I played soccer, so my example is always going to be, practicing shooting on your goalkeeper. In various different scenarios. Playing off the shoulder of a defender. Turning around them and shooting just multiple times as much as you can because you're very much likely going to face that in a game. Playing the offside trap if you're a defender, heading the ball consistently, and just the little scenarios that will consistently occur during a game. You just perform them to an extent where you're like, okay, this is just muscle memory, and that can also be, in some instances, you can't really replicate that, but you can get as close as you can. And that kind of goes into the second thing, which is making sure you're practicing with a similar level of intensity as if you were competing. To, one, better hone your skills, and also, two, get some honest feedback as to how you respond to high pressure situations and where you can improve. This one can be problematic for a lot of athletes just simply because a lot don't necessarily maybe have the motivation or see the need to psych themselves up to perform in that type of high pressure situation. But realistically, if you train the same way that you perform, your performance is probably going to get better. That obviously that comes with some pros and cons. You obviously don't want to be always gunning at 100% in your practice because you might injure yourself, but you always need to be working at least a similar intensity to make sure that you can honestly tell yourself, okay, I am actually prepared for what's going to go on in the game, or I'm not. And that's the only real way to find out without there being too many consequences. Better find out in practice than find out in the game. And then the third thing is honestly just establishing a pre-game or pre-practice ritual that's just going to get you physically or mentally in the zone. Something that it doesn't even have to make any sense. There's a lot of players who, at least again, I always use soccer as an example, who they'll say something or they'll touch the pitch or something or do something just superstitious. That before every single game, and it doesn't have to make sense as long as it gets you in the zone. It gets you in the zone. It doesn't really matter too much. Yeah. So, Matt, I don't know. You said you had the Usain Bolt audio clip. Did you do anything like superstitious before a game where you're like, this doesn't make any sense, but I know I'll do better?
I'm sure I must have.
Yeah.
Like my, I guess, pre-race routine was always just get up, run through your A's and B's, do your strides,
Yeah.
and then stand in line, wait for your heat to go, and then go. I never really did anything. Oh no, yes I did. No, I had I had my competition socks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had my competition socks that I always
Yeah.
wore. Well, for two reasons. There was a practical reason too, is because they were thin enough that I could, because like you're supposed to really wear track spikes bare feet,
Yeah.
but that like my track spikes, like they're all like basically enclosed. There's no breathability. I'm running in these bare feet. They're disgusting. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna at least have a layer of sock in between. But they were nice, like little thin, low cut socks, so it even looked like I was barefoot. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would say just like preparing my and even the night before, like preparing my like my competition clothes, so like my singlet and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was probably my pre-competition ritual that I did before every meet. But I can't really think I did anything that was like super nonsensical. That was just for me. I think everything I did had at least an element of practicality to it.
Okay. So those were like very practical, ways to improve your concentration when it comes to your actual performance. There's also the element of mental preparation as well. And this kind of, again, this also extends outside of athletics, and extends outside of also the moment of competition. And that's just generally treating yourself with a similar level of like self-respect and kindness that you would, treat a friend, family member, teammate, or other people you believe in and want to see succeed. You want that same level of belief and, I guess, giving yourself the benefit of the doubt towards yourself in as many situations as you can, especially when you make mistakes and that negative self-talk starts going. I've that's always been an issue with me when it came to when I played soccer, was the minute something didn't go right, that negative self-talk would immediately start going. I'm thinking, oh, my teammates think I'm shit, my coach thinks I'm shit, I'm just gonna get subbed off, and that level of belief just turns off.
Yeah.
It's always important to just kind of keep that in check and remind yourself, like, if my teammates were good teammates, they probably wouldn't say that and think that. And if my teammate did the same thing, I always have to remember, the goal is for us to succeed, and we're not going to succeed if one of us is putting the other individual down. So you can't do it to yourself either. Um, the second thing is you have to train yourself to always be aware of the big picture and kind of avoid catastrophizing small instances where you made a mistake. It's important to be self-aware of where you can improve, but that reflection can occur afterwards. You're finished what you're doing. When it shouldn't. Even when you're done and you're reflecting on that, you can't let that overshadow all the other good things you kind of forget about that you've done. And that again, when I played soccer or just general aspects of our life, we tend to focus on the negative. So you always need to be, remind yourself, how much progress you've actually made or all the things that you do well, just to balance out, again, that negative self-talk and have like a healthy level of self-criticism to improve, and not just self-criticism to, I guess, bring you down to
Yeah.
a certain extent. And then the third thing is just, it kind of ties the other two things together and kind of overshadows, I guess, or encapsulates everything when it comes to like mental focus and training, is just having overall self-awareness of thoughts that tend to creep into your mind that are positive and detrimental to your performance. It's important not to just push them back to the back of your mind over an extended period of time, but have like I said before, having pre-planned responses that snap you, I guess, back into the reality of the situation, and that can be, you're maybe either beating yourself up, or you actually aren't addressing something that needs to change in order for you to do what you need to do. So at the end of the day, you always need to, I guess, have a certain level of level of honesty and self awareness as an athlete and just a person in general in order to, you know, plan how you want your life to kind of develop, whether it be in the macro or the micro scale, and have responses that snap you back into reality so you don't, repeat the same things and same mistakes again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's gonna conclude concentration.
Concentration. Okay. So moving out of that, we're gonna get into a topic that we've kind of taken jabs at along the way here, and that's gonna be imagery and visualization. So basically, what imagery is, it's the mental process of creating an experience that's similar to the task you're trying to accomplish. So the purpose of imagery is to kind of achieve in your mind exactly what it is that you want your body to do. So images are thoughts that you can see, hear, smell, taste, or feel. So it's going to be just sensory emulation, essentially. It's going to include memories, dreams, daydreams, plans and visions, fantasies, anything that you can imagine, essentially. And there's a few different theories about imagery that kind of give us kind of an insight into how all this works, and how you can use imagery to improve your performance, both athletically and life-wise. The first one is going to be called the psychoneuromuscular theory. Now, when an elite performer practices using imagery, they imagine movements without performing them. So the brain's going to interpret that as if they were actually performing them, which is going to provide similar impulses in the brain, in our muscles, and small impulses are going to fire from our brain to the muscles with the exactness of what you're imagining. So it's going to facilitate the learning of motor skills because imagined events are going to innervate the muscles, and physical practice, the same way physical practice of the movement does. It's going to strengthen those neural pathways. So obviously, imagining yourself lifting weights is not going to improve your muscle mass, but imagining yourself lifting weights and going through the exact same motions you would if you were at the gym but you're at home in this imagery session is going to at least allow your brain to connect the pieces it needs to connect to the muscles required for that movement of doing a bench press, essentially. The second one we have here is going to be symbolic learning theory. Now, imagery may function as basically it says imagery functions as a coding system to help people understand and acquire movement patterns. So it's going to help athletes plan movement patterns, and athletes are going to be able to become familiar with what needs to be done to perform successfully. So it's basically just imagining the process of achieving that task and everything that you need to do along the way to be able to achieve that task. The third one we have is the bioinformational theory. Now, this is a theoretical explanation of how imagery improves athletic performance. It basically assumes that the mental image created by the subject is stored in our long-term memory of the brain, as an organized set of stimulus propositions and response propositions. Now, the stimulus basically describes the content of the image. So if we're going to relate it to, let's say, a basketball shot, so the response, or sorry, the stimulus is going to be the feel, like how the ball feels, the sound of the crowd in wherever you are that you're playing. That's going to be the stimulus proposition. Response is going to describe the response to the stimuli in the imagined scenario. So in this case, it's going to be the muscle tension when making a shot, or the feeling you get when the ball goes in the net. So using the bioinformational theory of imagery, it's going to suggest that performance can actually be increased by recalling the response for a particular stimulus and modifying these responses to represent perfect control and execution of a skill. And to kind of simplify that, essentially you're going to obviously imagine yourself making that shot, um, but you're going to imagine yourself making that shot perfectly every single time. That's going to hopefully help increase the actual execution of that shot you need to make. And so that's basically a general description of what imagery is. We talk about visualization. It's basically just imagery that only focuses on the visual aspects of a sensory experience. So generally speaking, visualization is the process of creating a mental image or intention of what you want to actually happen or feel in reality. And there's two types of visualization. There's going to be external visualization. So that's visualization that takes place from the perspective of a spectator. So imagining somebody watching you essentially perform. And then there's going to be internal visualization, which is going to take place from the perspective of the performer. So that's going to be imagining yourself doing something. And so visualization was something that I worked a lot with when I was with my sports psychologist, and basically just imagining those scenarios and being able to recall the responses that I wanted to feel, and being able to emulate those feelings as accurately as I could. Basically, so that's almost kind of when we talk about the external visualization. I think something that I did with the Usain Bolt clip was like I would just close my eyes and just for that moment pretend that I was Usain Bolt, and that like you know, everyone going crazy in the stadium was, you know, cheering for me in that scenario. And that was kind of my external visualization, that kind of routine that I did. But it's not even just it's difficult to describe without actually doing it, but like having an imagery session is something that's going to be largely beneficial, not just to an athlete, but to anybody who needs to perform a task with a certain degree of mastery or success. In just sitting down, going through everything that we just talked about concentration and being able to actually focus on this task of imagining a scenario of you doing something very well, doing something successfully. When we talked about the psychoneuromuscular theory, you could even create those neural pathways. We talk about bioinformational theory. You're going to be imagining yourself doing something perfectly. You're going to be teaching your muscles what it looks like to do that perfect task perfectly. That's kind of the benefit and the reason of visualization, and it's a huge thing in just psychology, sports psychology, anything that involves just performing those tasks, which is our everyday life. You know, you can imagine yourself doing a podcast, right? You know, you close your eyes, you go through everything that you want to say, how you want to act, how you want to appear on said podcast. You go and do it, and hopefully everything turns out well. I know, well, for me, I didn't do that. No, like,
I mean, it's the same way when you practice a script or something, or a speech that you have to say, you know, except in that sense, it's not so much just visualizing it, but you're actually going through the motions of what you're going to do. You know, it's again just extra preparation, you know, extra practice to prepare for what you know is actually going to happen.
Like, so I played piano for a few years. I've played guitar for much longer, but I'm at the point now in guitar where I can kind of just get on it and just do what I need to do. But when I was learning piano, something that I would really do is I would watch and listen. I still do it with guitar actually now too. If I'm trying to learn something, I will listen to the song, listen to the piece, and imagine and visualize myself performing said piece, going through, hitting those notes that I need to hit. Even if I can't actually do it physically, I'm training my mind to know exactly how that looks like and how it's going to feel when I eventually do it. And that's honestly a really, really good thing that I've always done when it comes to learning my music, at least, is like just imagining myself playing it in that scenario, even though I'm not actually doing so.
Mm-hmm. For
Um,
myself,
yeah.
I'm trying to think. All my honestly, all my visualization kind of occurred when I played soccer. Now
Mm.
that I lift weights and stuff. I guess from playing sports, there's a lot less variables that kind of need to be manipulated when you lift weights. It's kind of more of a I would say, you know what? No, the visualization occurs maybe right before I'm gonna do a set.
Yeah.
If it's a difficult set, it's kind of psyching myself up, remembering past experiences of what it felt like when stuff gets hard. When one physically like you feel like you want to stop. I think when it comes to stuff like that, when it comes to maybe I guess endurance athletes probably experience the same thing. You need to imagine ahead of time that past like pain point, and just imagine how you're going to deal with it and how you want to feel, when you achieve your goal for the most part.
Right. All right. So moving on here to the last few things that we're going to talk about. We got leadership. So leadership, when it obviously plays a huge role in our psychology. So ourselves being the leader and also being able to follow a leader. Obviously, if your leader is not very good, you're not going to feel very confident. You're not going to feel very motivated. You're not going to be able to concentrate on what needs to get done because the leadership is bad. So David, take us into leadership and exactly how all this stuff works.
Okay, so when it comes to leadership, I think we need to kind of move away from the idea or the very simplistic idea that a leader is only present in situations, where groups of people need to be directed or pushed towards a certain goal, like the the office, I guess boss or your boss at work, or maybe that one coach who's very inspirational or pushing you to be your best. Leadership kind of characteristics are displayed by everyone to a certain extent, whether it be with the people that are close to you, or even just ourselves. We need a certain amount of leadership in regards to our own life to be able to lead other people and be in a position where we can direct other people and help them out, towards a common goal. Everyone has the ability to be a leader in some capacity of our lives, and you probably will be faced with a situation where you do have to lead people or person. And while some people might naturally be more effective as a leader, at the end of the day, leadership is a skill that everybody kind of has to hone to whether you whether you like it or not. That and also needs to be improved constantly. So, what exactly is leadership? It's essentially the behavioral process of influencing individuals and groups towards set goals. I would also include yourself as well. We have various different types of leaders. I'm not going to get too crazy into the details. We have autocratic leadership, where the leader kind of has full control over everything that's going on. Um, some benefits of that is that there's some very clear communication between the people working under them and the leader, but the negatives are there's not really the people being led don't really have too much of an input, so it can kind of feel very controlling. And then we have democratic, participatory, and laissez-faire. And how that functions is as you start switching from democratic all the way to laissez-faire, the level of involvement of the people underneath the leader kind of increases and continually increases, to the point where the leader doesn't even act as a leader. They kind of work more as, I guess, a final say in delegating leadership responsibilities to everybody else, which is kind of the case of a laissez-faire situation where it's more of like maybe like a cooperative workplace where like the employees kind of own the organization, and you just have one person who kind of is the quote unquote leader, but they just kind of help make decisions with everybody else. And
So like
yeah,
hands
that's kind of the
off,
same.
which is basically what laissez faire roughly translates
Pretty
to.
pretty much, and yeah, it's kind of like a cooperative where everybody is kind of a leader to a certain extent, and everybody kind of stays in their own lane, but you have maybe one person who, I guess, oversees everything to make sure there's at least some type of direction going on.
Right.
When it comes to what's the best leadership style, that's all dependent on the goal and the capabilities of the individuals involved. That includes the leader and the individuals that are being led. I know I talked about like autocratic, how it doesn't exactly seem like the most fun system to work under. But if you have a strong leader who knows exactly what's going on and you have a deadline to meet, and you have people who don't really have too many ideas or too many concerns about how things are done, then it can work well. It can be pretty efficient. But again, it depends on the goal, and it also depends on how long this task needs to be completed as well.
Right.
When it comes to some common characteristics of what quote unquote good leaders are going to be, a big thing is good leaders will lead by example and by doing the things that they hope that the people that they're leading will do for them as well. This can be demonstrating commitment, showing confidence in what they're doing, keeping composure in difficult situations, and just overall having a strong and good sense of character when it comes to their own actions, and also judging people who they bring into the group, to work with. It also involves, vocally showing encouragement, and also, taking a stand and enforcing an attitude that's beneficial for the group to succeed, and not just for and not, I guess, allowing maybe some individuals with some, poor behavioral tendencies to kind of get away with whatever they're doing that jeopardizes the whole goal of the group. We also have something that we can kind of look at that will determine how successful the leader is going to be. It's called the multi-dimensional model of sport leadership. I can explain the graphic. It's not too important. We essentially have three categories of situations, or I guess conditions. The first one is going to be something called I actually don't even know how to pronounce it. Antecedents. Yeah, antecedents. Close enough.
It's
Well,
antecedents.
essentially, yeah. All right. Essentially, those are kind of predetermined factors that will affect how the group's going to function, and that's going to be the situational characteristics. So exactly what needs to get done. What's the organization, stuff like that. The characteristics of the individual leader, and the characteristics of the members. These are kind of set things that kind of can't be changed, but that's exactly the situation. That's essentially the situation you're working with. The next category is you have the leader behavior, and this is going to include required behavior that they need to show for success, the preferred behavior that they actually want to do, and their actual behavior. And the final category is going to be consequences, which is simply performance and satisfaction about the performance. In order for optimal performance and satisfaction to be achieved, what has to occur is that the leader's preferred, required, and actual behaviors all have to be consistent with each other. They can't want to do one thing. I guess you could say that their preferred behavior has to line up with their required behavior to be successful. If their preferred behavior is different from the required behavior, what they may do is they may do what they want to do, but not what's right for the actual group. And in order for that required, you might also get a situation where they want to do what's required to succeed with the group, but that may differentiate from what they actually do, which is going to result in a different outcome. Everything and all these characteristics will come together in regards to the leader when what they want to do lines up with what they should do, and what they should do lines up with what they actually occurs and how they actually lead. And that's actually what's going to result in the performance being satisfactory overall for everybody involved. So that kind of explains, I guess, all these different factors and how they kind of come together in a leader that does what they need to do in order for the group to be successful. Some common mistakes that plague a lot of leaders, in fact, most of us just in general, when it comes to everyday life, is trying to be liked rather than respected. When it comes to a leadership situation, in fact, you don't necessarily even have to be liked too much by the people working under you for you to see some success. At least in the short term. In the long term, you probably need them to like you to a certain extent. But if you are focused on them liking you, it can kind of result in a lot of things going on where they may not do what you need them to do. They may like you to a certain extent, but they may not respect you to the point where even if you need them to do something that they don't want to do, if they respect you, they'd probably do it anyway. But if they simply like you, then they might play you as a fool and kind of do their own thing. Not asking teammates or people working under you for help or advice, that's a basic ego thing for the most part for a lot of people. You know, in order to be a leader, you kind of have to be collaborative, and if you're not actively admitting when you're incapable of doing something on your own, then over an extended period of time, there's just going to be a lot of miscommunication. Just things aren't just going to go well. Um, Not emphasizing skills and talents that can go for the leader themselves. You know, not focusing on, I guess, the good aspects about themselves and understanding their lane, but also not encouraging or highlighting that in the people that they work under. You know, it's better to be somebody who emphasizes what the group is doing well rather than trying to be nitpicky about all the things that are going wrong. You know, you want to inspire, not degrade the people that you lead. That kind of goes into not using constructive criticism. Again, you want to inspire. You don't want to demotivate the people that work under you, because over time they're just probably going to lose some respect or just not be mentally up for what you need to be done. Not developing individual responsibility and accountability. Again, a big ego thing. If you constantly blame other people that work under you and avoid, admitting your mistakes, you're probably going to lose a lot of respect from the people that you're trying to lead. And overall, this lack of self-awareness is probably going to be a big downfall for you, because you don't learn to improve and grow as a leader, which everybody has to do all the time. Doesn't matter how good you are. Treating everybody the same is also can be a flaw, in the sense that everybody in your group is going to have different abilities, and it's not wrong to elevate some people over others if they have, the merits to do so. So you need to be able to recognize everybody else's strengths and weaknesses, as well as your own, in order to make sure everybody is doing something that they are actually, qualified and best suited to do. And then the final one is a communication thing, just not keeping people informed. If you're not saying what you actually want to say, and not doing what you actually want to do, then, or what you say and versus what you do don't align, then obviously there's going to be issues, and there's going to be a breakdown in trust, which you absolutely always need in order to be a good leader.
Right.
So I think that's going to be everything when it comes to really like leadership characteristics. I guess like a little summary would be, I guess, identify, what level of or what way you like to lead people, and where do you have enough expertise to lead people, and I guess, predict ahead of time when you're going to have that role in order to prepare, and just, go through your own individual, I guess, weaknesses and strength, and realize, like, develop some self-awareness and realize, okay, like, I'm good at this, I'm not good at that, where can I improve, So that's pretty much going to be leadership.
So then, with all that information, would you consider yourself a good leader, especially as somebody who needs to coach other people as well, and lead them in that regard? Would you consider yourself to be a strong leader?
I will say this: I think I'm a good teacher, but my leadership capabilities need some work, in the sense that I'm good at demonstrating, and showing people how to do things and explaining things in a way that makes sense. However, when it comes to I guess putting my foot down in certain situations, I could do a lot better, but also at the same time also learn to be a little bit more flexible, and try and be a little bit more empathetic, if you kind of get what I mean.
Yeah.
Like there's kind of a fine line between, letting clients do what they want to do, and not, trying to encourage them to be as best as they can, while also not, taking into consideration every client is different and everybody's not going to be you. Like for myself, I like to bodybuild, so I inherently am trying to optimize my lifestyle to accommodate for my bodybuilding, no matter, and I'm willing to sacrifice some things people aren't willing to do, but I always have to remember that the majority of people that I work with aren't bodybuilders, so
Yeah.
I need to understand, like, they're not going to have that same level of like intrinsic motivation, that same level of focus to sacrifice and just, be in a mindset, I'm here to tick boxes. Some people require more encouragement, more, more compassion, and that's just something I think I need to improve on for the most part. So I guess to summarize all that, do I think I'm a good leader? I say I have some work to do, but I do have the potential to be better at what I do,
Right.
for the most part. What could you say about yourself in regards to, I guess, your own personal life and the athletes you've worked with?
Uh, I mean, you've worked with me. You know I take charge and
Yeah,
usually try and organize things. Even when I'm not the official leader, I still go and
yeah,
try and do my best to make sure everything is in line. So I think that's always been something that I've not like excelled at, but a personality trait that I've always had, where I like to go out and take charge and to lead. Um, that being said, I have no problem with being the one being led, as long as the leadership is good. Of course, it's usually when I see that the leadership is lacking that I'll step up and try and
yeah,
not replace, but try and supplement with my sort of own form of leadership, which sometimes works, sometimes does not work. Um, but one thing that I kind of realized, especially working with kids for the most part, is the mistake of trying to be liked rather than respected. Um,
yeah,
when it comes to training, and especially training kids who, might be sometimes they might be rowdy, they might be um, not out of control, but not necessarily paying full attention to what you're saying. Is at a certain point you need to not be their friend, and you actually need to be the coach, and just try and make sure that they know that when you're speaking, it's your time. No one else is talking, stuff like that. So being able to learn from various mistakes, but always incorporating the people who I am working with. So whether I'm leading them, whether I'm training them, making sure that their skills are being used effectively, I think is a
hmm
strong skill that I at least have now. But
yeah,
yeah, the biggest thing is always just towing the line between am I the friend, or am I the leader in this scenario.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think you can be a little bit of both, but
I
at
think you
certain
have to be a little bit of
you
both.
do. And I've tried both methods of just being the friendly guy who uh, is there to have fun, and that doesn't really get the job done. And I've also tried the method of just being the straight up hard ass. Um, there's no fun allowed in my gym uh,
Yeah.
type training method, and that hasn't always worked either. So for
It
me,
also just depends on the individual,
yeah,
what they're more receptive to. Some people will demand like I want you to be a hard ass on me, while other people are like, I'm a much more reserved person. I prefer like a little bit more compassion.
yeah. But I think, yeah, for the most part, I have no problem with taking charge and leading. I just think it's something that my personality trait is more geared to, I suppose.
Yeah. I think for myself, like I will lead when I see when I one if I feel confident that I can lead well, especially when it comes like for me academically I've always been the guy who like leads and will carry the group usually in like a group assignment. When it comes to like outside, that's outside of stuff like that where I'm not confident, I'll be a little bit hesitant and I'll see if anybody rises up. But if everybody's too timid, it's just like, okay, this affects all of us. Let me see what I can do.
Yeah,
Hopefully, like me leading by example might result in somebody, kind of helping me out because maybe deep down I know I'm like this is not going to go well if I lead. Hopefully, somebody steps up and helps me out.
right, yeah.
Yeah, so that's my perception, I guess, of my own leadership abilities. Good, but they need some improvement.
So going off leadership, obviously, in order to lead, um, there needs to be a group and there needs to be a team, and there's certain dynamics that are kind of interwoven in between members of a group, members of a team, that are going to greatly affect um, your psychology in this case. Um, so let's just go quickly into group and team dynamics, and then wrap it up here.
All right. Well, something I guess we kind of have to distinguish is we have to distinguish between what's a group and what's a team.
Right.
Essentially, all teams are groups, but not all groups are teams. What that kind of means is that groups are simply a collection of people with similar goals or characteristics. There's a lot of people who like to bodybuild with me, but I'm not on a team with them.
Right.
While groups are more complex, there's a sense of togetherness, structured communication, certain level of dependency on one another, and everyone kind of certain goals. I guess the simplest way is if you play a sport, you probably have the guys you play pickup with. That's your little pickup group. But then you maybe have the people that you play competitively with, where the stakes are a little bit higher. That's your team. You have to probably be a lot more connected with them in order for things to get done, as well as you guys want. When it comes to groups, there's obviously group roles. Everybody has their own distinct duty that they have to do in order to get the job done. There's going to be informal roles, which can be, I guess I'm gonna think of this in the sense of a team sport. There's which can be more personality based and have to do more with the group culture. There's usually the one person in your team that is just consistently joking. There's going to be that one guy who is a lot more serious. There's going to be a bunch of different just like overall just kind of culture dynamics that occur, and these aren't set things. This is just based on people's personality.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be formal roles though. Like you have set playing positions. Not everybody can be a goalkeeper. Not everybody's going to be the captain or vice captain or the set person for this role. That's something that's been predetermined ahead of time, and everybody's kind of either on board with it or not. That's what it is. It's not as fluid as your informal roles. So moving on from roles, probably one of the most important things is creating a positive team climate. For myself, I've had, I've seen the difference that having, I guess, like a positive like environment around can kind of make on a team that can honestly make or that's usually what will make or break a team. The sense of togetherness, or if it's positive or negative, and that's going to depend on a bunch of different things that are kind of established.
Yeah.
Which is, for a lot of the time, it's going to be mutual respect and just general cohesion for you guys to work together. Some important aspects when it comes to having a positive team climate is one is social support. Again, you don't have to be best friends with your teammates, but having a certain like level of mutual care for each other is kind of important, especially when you guys face with difficult situations, whether that be you are down in a game and you desperately need some motivation or some reliance on the other people around you to pull out, or just general aspects of daily life. Maybe your teammates are your friends, and you're going through something that it's hurting your ability to perform, and maybe you need to be honest with them, talk to them, and understand they're not going to just kind of throw you under the bus when things go bad. Distinctiveness is also something rather important. Trying to create like a unique team climate is important for setting yourselves apart, and even just yourself if you play an individual sport from the other teams. And it's important for team morale. You need something to, I guess, rally around, or an identity, to kind of look towards, to separate yourself from everybody else. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to really imagine, like we're better than them and we're going to beat them because this. If you have nothing that separates them, then maybe some of that negative self-talk starts coming in, because you might start thinking, oh wait, there's nothing really that separates us from them. Like maybe they can beat us, or maybe there's nothing special about us, and maybe we don't deserve this opportunity, and it kind of descends from there. Third is a big one: fairness. Avoiding favoritism within a team is pretty important for avoiding toxic team climates and ensuring there's a healthy level of respect and trust amongst your teammates. And this kind of goes regardless of who is the superstar of the team, who does this or who does that. There needs to be a certain level of mutual respect between everybody to make sure that if you play a team sport, everybody has a role to play. Everybody needs to respect one another in order for everybody to do that role effectively. Otherwise, you start forming resentment, lack of trust, and at that point everything kind of starts to break down, and you're probably not going to succeed, especially when you need to rely on each other. Similarity. Although a certain level of autonomy is important in a group having, although like a certain level of autonomy amongst each other is kind of important, it's important to at least, when in a team or in a group, you need to at least have similar enough goals or a similar enough mentality to make sure everybody's working towards that set goal. If you're in a championship caliber team, everybody probably has a championship level like mentality. Everybody's probably there's probably very few guys on the team who suffer from chronic like lack of self-esteem or low confidence. If you guys are winning, everybody believes you're going to win, and you're going to win together. If there starts being fractures in regards to who thinks what, or what somebody's aspirations are, if somebody's like, you know, we're gonna win the championship, and the other team's like, yeah, and the other like half the team is like, maybe if we make the playoffs, that'd be cool. There's obviously going to be a different level of effort and just overall self belief, which is honestly a usual reason for a lot of good players leaving teams, because they feel like I need to go find a environment where you know, I feel challenged, you know, and this
Right.
environment isn't conducive enough for growth, you know. So those are some pretty important things when it comes to, you know, creating that positive team environment. You know, at the end of the day, you need to just be in a place where everybody kind of has similar goals and everybody kind of respects each other to a certain extent to reach set goals.
I think that's definitely something that I largely avoided by competing in individual sports, is not really having a team. Like, yeah, there's a track and field team, but like, you're not
Yeah,
teammates. At that point, it's a track and field group.
yeah,
And you can obviously you can support other people in that group and, you know, cheer them on and stuff like that. But you're never going to be working together to achieve the same goal. You all have your own different goals, and you're all going.
unless it's the relay team.
Let, don't even get me started on the relay team. The yeah, that's definitely because I did relay for most of my years of track, but
Yeah,
um, the problem, as I'm sure you can probably already guess, having stated before, being the only sprinter um, in my school, in my entire district, even, um, relay is 4 people.
yeah.
I'm one of them,
Mm.
so that means that the other 3 aren't sprinters. Um,
I'm
so
guessing you ended up getting the cross country kids,
yeah, that was
because
all we
nobody
could.
else was pretty
That
much running.
that was the best I could do. I would, hey, I know you just ran a 1500 meter, but you want to jump in on my relay team, because I need 3 other people to just pass me the baton. And honestly, like, I remember my first year doing it,
Yeah,
because like I was always the anchor position, so I was number 4, so I would uh, carry out the last 100 meters of the race, and for the most part, like I said, my district sucked at track and field. Um, so for the most part, I could make up the distance lost from the other 3 legs of the relay in just my leg alone.
hmm
I think we even did. I think we even maybe won a race in my first year of doing it. But yeah, definitely had no level of similarity. Um,
yeah,
no level of distinct. I mean, I guess we were distinct in that this was a relay team, but it was like 25% actual people who can do the event, 75% people who are just there for fun. Um,
you honestly were better like pulling like soccer players rather honestly like some other more explosive sports.
I mean, it was, again, it was a small school, so our soccer players were the runners basically, but
Oh, of course, of course.
none of them sprinted. So,
Yeah.
um, what was I gonna say though? So yeah, it even got so bad that even in my last year, like, I was pulling juniors, um, not even not even juniors, like grade 9. So like how the, I guess, divisions worked. It was like midget, which is like grade 9, juniors grade 10, and then seniors grade 11 and 12.
Yeah.
So I was literally pulling like midget and junior kids into a grade 12 relay team, and I was like, listen, just do
You guys
do
have been elevated.
do your best. I know
Yeah.
I know you're like 14 going up against 17-year-olds here, but do your best, and I will try and carry you as far as I can. Yeah, it didn't go well that year, but at that point,
Hey man, it's a good experience for them.
but yeah, no, I don't think the problem that I've always had in a team setting is not having the people being able to sort of match my intensity for things, because I'm extremely competitive when it comes to literally anything that I do.
Yeah.
If I'm doing something, I'm doing it because I want to be the best at it. There's no compromise, there's no settling. It's, I'm going hard in the paint, and anything less is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Obviously, with expectations and standards that high, it's very difficult to find teammates who can also support that mindset and that point of view.
Yeah, especially your pool of selection is already kind of small.
Yeah, and it's like being the best on a team, and everyone else on that team is just gonna consistently let you down, is never a good feeling, because like I understand they're trying their best, but at the end of the day, it's like I put my heart and soul into training for something, and then I have to basically accept mediocrity. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, you gotta accept like, oh, I guess this is my circumstances.
yeah, no no choice of my own. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think yeah, I don't have a whole lot of experience. Like I played a little bit of soccer. Uh, when I played baseball, actually, to be fair, that was like it was like house league baseball, so
Yeah.
it was barely competitive at all. But I would smash that ball, and being a sprinter at that time as well, it's like I would clear all the bases like it was
Yeah.
nothing. I'd get to second base before that ball even touched the ground, and it did touch the ground because again it was house league baseball. No one's catching
Yeah. Nobody's
something
diving.
like no one is running that far out into the field to try and catch a ball, right?
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of a sport that I've played where um, like everyone kind of, I guess maybe when I played a little bit of basketball, and we were actually really good that year, and it was just team chemistry was it even good? It was okay.
It
Um,
was sufficient.
enough for us to go undefeated that year, actually,
Oh yeah.
for the regular season. Playoffs were a different story, but for the regular season we were undefeated. So, and I think that definitely plays a huge role into team morale and team psychology and mindset, and
Yeah.
having the motivation because you're with the boys.
With the boys, yeah.
We're here to do a job. Let's go out and do it. And getting psyched, getting stoked to go have fun, and also just win.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that being said, do you have anything else to add before we
I
wrap
was gonna
up
say like
this?
my own experience of I guess
Yeah, go
like
for it.
team sport. Like I think for myself, like the biggest reason I don't know, never performed to the best of my abilities was I guess I never really made the effort to connect to my teammates as well as I could. And I was always very much more concerned with my own performance than the actual like result of the game, you know.
Yeah.
I was much more like concerned with like my own perceived like level of how good I was, and I was always more thinking about like, okay, where can I take this in regards to my career, you know, not the team as a collective. So it's kind of like a combination of like lack of self esteem and just like I don't really give a shit about anybody besides myself, you know, which I never like outwardly showed. Like I was never like hostile or anything. I was just like much more consumed with like my own performance, you know, which is I guess kind of makes sense why I've never really touched team sports again. So I went into an individual as it gets, being bodybuilding, you know, which kind of consumes like a bunch of other aspects of my life too, you know.
Yeah.
So it's almost it's poetic in the sense that I was like, I don't like team sports, I don't like working with people. I'm gonna probably do the most individual sport there is, or not even a sport. I'm basically a male beauty pageant, but you know, it is what it is. You know, picking something where it's just like I even get to play with like my food and everything is essentially about me, you know.
Right.
But even then, even to be successful in anything, you do require like a certain level of collaboration, whether that be with coaches or working with other people. In my case, it's working with physiotherapists for my injuries and stuff, you know. And then eventually I do want to start working with a coach who can take care of my programming and stuff like that, you know. So you can't escape being collaborative and teamwork to a certain extent.
Yeah. I think yeah for like that's why I really liked doing individual sport, just because I don't have to rely on anybody. Um,
Yeah.
I can't be let down, and if I am let down, it's 100% my fault, which is gonna
Yeah.
push me to try harder the next time.
Yeah.
You can't pass the blame on to anybody but yourself. It's like if you're on a bad basketball team, you can sit on the bench and just blame your teammates and be
Yeah.
like, Scott sucks at shooting threes. Oh, there's another air ball. This is why we
Yeah.
lost. Scott is
Yeah.
garbage. Um,
Yeah.
but
Also, I guess it's just more frustrating because it's it's something outside of your control.
exactly, there's nothing you can do. You're sitting on the bench and you're watching Scott just whiff every
Yeah.
shot. You're like, Scott, you gotta pass. Scott, you gotta hit those, man. You gotta hit
Yeah.
those. What are you doing? We're down by 20. There's 3 minutes left. We're not gonna make it.
Yeah.
And at that point, you're subbed out for the rest of the game. There's nothing you can do. And doing individual sports, the ball hypothetically, no pun intended, is in your court. Um,
Yeah.
you can shoot threes all day. If you miss, it's on you. You're to blame. But also, it's going to motivate you to push harder to make those threes next time.
Yeah. At that point, it's just again, it's all in your control. So it can either be discouraging or also empowering in the sense where you're just like, you know what, I know what I need to do. I don't need to really worry about anybody else. You know,
Exactly.
unless it's competition. Yeah, I think that kind of it's a nice way to cap off this episode.
All right, this extra long episode of Fitness Dakota. There was a lot to talk about today.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be quite a lot of content for highlights. Um, New news: I have a TikTok now. Um, Same as my Twitch name, MattisTTV. Go ahead and follow that. I'm going to be posting clips of this show, obviously, on TikTok. It's popping off. It's booming. Um, it's definitely not the direction that I want to go, but being able to take chunks from what we do here and just throw it out there and try and make it as accessible as possible, because no one's going to sit through a 2.5 hour episode of our show. It's just
Unless it's us.
unless it's us. Like, the only like consistent live viewers we have are myself, David, and our significant others, and even then some of them actually tune out periodically. So like
I don't.
the
We
only
do.
the only consistent ones are the two of us. So being able to throw it out there, be accessible to the masses, put that information out there um, as easily as possible is going to be the direction we're going to try and take here. So keep an eye out for that. Follow my TikTok. Subscribe to us on YouTube, Fitness Decoded. We are the one and only, the best Fitness Decoded. Um, and yeah, we're going to be, hopefully, when the weather gets warmer, we can start going outside. We're going to be doing just some generic fitness content as well. It's not just going to be this show, it's going to be, shorter videos, like actual videos. So we're planning that. That's in the works. What else we got going on before we dip out here?
Honestly, that's pretty much it, man.
That's
Like
pretty
once
much it.
this, I'm done school, this month's over. Doug Ford decides to let us out. Yeah, more content, some more fun stuff this summer.
Perfect. Well, yeah, if you want to keep an eye out for that, make sure you follow me on my Twitch channel that you hopefully are watching. But as I can see, there's 4 of you and 2 of them are us. So it's definitely not you right now. But yeah, that's going to be in the description. Mattis, replace the A with an X, TTV. On Twitch if you want to catch us live. Fitness Decoded on YouTube. My Twitch username on TikTok if you want to get like low attention span content. What else are we on? I still need to make the Twitter account. Literally, I have the Twitter handle popping up literally
Yeah,
every like 30 seconds on all of our episodes, and I haven't even made the Twitter account yet.
it's okay. It's okay.
But it
We're
just
good.
that's just, okay. Do you use Twitter? No, you don't use Twitter. You don't even have a Twitter.
No,
We need, we need a social media manager because I don't use Twitter and I hate Twitter and I don't want to go on Twitter, but like professionally it
neither.
makes sense to have Twitter.
I guess the final thing is remember, guys, keep harassing Mammoth Mug.
Yeah, they're trying to get a sponsorship. I mean, it's going to be a lot nicer if I can at least say, hey, I'm a Twitch affiliate. So 20 more followers. Let's go. Let's get it. Hit that follow button. Hit that subscribe button. Follow us on Instagram. Go to David's website, Castro Fitness, CastroWithA0.com. Other than that, we will catch you all in the next one.